Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Steve D'Angelo, the founder and CEO of Harborside Health Center. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Bonilla, Dodd, Bonta, for having me here today and hearing my views. Thank you also on behalf of the many, many people who have been working for many long decades to bring this day about. Unfortunately, many of them are no longer with us. Thank you on their behalf. I also welcome the discussion today. I think that the regulations are a huge step forward and appreciate the amount of work that has gone into them and care and thought. I do think that there are some areas that could be clarified. I do also think that there are some specific provisions that will definitely pose some obstacles to the operations at Harborside Health Center and those of the hundreds of growers that we work with. I'd like to just tell you a little bit about Harborside so you can better understand the impact that the regulations might have. We are possibly the most popular medical cannabis organization in California with over 200,000 registered patients. Over our existence, we are one of the first 6 dispensaries licensed by Oakland, which was the first jurisdiction anywhere in the United States to license medical cannabis dispensaries. We've conducted about 2.3 million individual transactions and raised $35 million in total tax contributions. That's made us the second largest taxpayer in Oakland. We have 150 amazing employees who have an amazing benefits package. Our entry-level wage is $15 to $18 for our entry-level employees. The reason that patients flock to Harborside is because we've offered them a unique set of services. Over 200 products are available every day. They're all laboratory tested for both potency and safety. We've been lab testing our medicine since 2009. We were the first dispensary in California to do so. We actually had to help create a laboratory to do that because none of the existing commercial labs would work with us. We have an on-site holistic care clinic, healthcare clinic, that provides patients with absolutely free chiropractic, acupuncture, about 10 other holistic therapies, and on-demand substance abuse counseling, 7 days a week, free of charge. We serve our growers with the largest bank of cannabis genetics that can be found in North America, both in seeds and in cuttings. We do all sorts of things in the community in terms of charitable donations and community outreach. I would also include amongst those efforts the leadership to defend California's medical cannabis industry against federal intervention in 2011, which cost a lot of money and a lot of executive energy. Lately, we've developed what I think is the future of cannabis medicine. This is a line which patients come into Harborside. They have a free appointment with a registered nurse. The nurse consults a database of the latest medical cannabis research and then writes up a treatment plan that specifies these little capsules here. They're just gel caps like you would see, vitamin E caps, and tinctures. They have many different cannabinoids in them. Most of them are non-active, non-psychoactive, tremendously, tremendously effective, filling a huge need for seriously ill patients. There are a number of provisions and some vagueness in the existing measure that would either inhibit our current operations or would prevent us from extending these services to the many communities and patients who ask for us to be closer located to them. So I'd be happy to run through some of those provisions if you like, either now or later.
We'll come back to that, and we'll finish up with our last, our next, we have 2 more speakers. Our next speaker, Keith Stevenson, the Executive Director of Purple Heart Patient Center. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Chairperson Bonilla. Thank you, Chairperson Bonta, and Chairperson Dodd. I'd like to let you know I'm Keith Stevenson, the Executive Director of Purple Heart Patient Center in Oakland. We are the oldest running dispensary in the city of Oakland. I'd like to let you know that I am a patient. And prior to my matriculation into medicinal cannabis, I was an aircraft maintenance technician for one of the largest airlines. And with the diagnosis of ankylosing spondylitis, which is a juvenile form of arthritis, that's how I then became involved in the industry. Subsequently, medical cannabis has helped me deal with it. Through the course of my young life, I've had 2 total hip replacements as well as one total shoulder replacement. So not only am I a businessman and a nonprofit operating dispensary, now we're for profit, but I'm also a patient. I wish to speak with you to the extent that I want you to understand that I come from an industry where we had an active fear that we were the only individuals working that could still go to jail just by working, having a job, working in a dispensary. And many of our cohorts are still not here. There are some who are incarcerated, and I want you guys to keep them in mind as we work through this, that they may need a place to work when they finish their incarceration from only doing what we all up here have done. One of the issues that I would like to see the legislative body work on is mobile delivery. Subsequently, about a week ago, between a week and 2 weeks ago, we had individuals who were employed with Ease Delivery Service actively come inside our dispensary and solicit patients. And when they were asked to leave, they went outside of our dispensary, actively solicited our patients, and when our security asked them to move on, they still did not move. They told our patients that they could actively purchase medicine from Ease if they called the number on the card. The transactions thus took place right across the street from our business in the Alameda County Department of Probation parking lot. With that being said, the probation department officers came out and asked them not to do it, to leave. The Ease operators wanted to tell the probation department officers that they have a right to feed their kids. So as you take into consideration of how this emerging paradigm is going to move forward, I ask that you use, or that the licensed brick and mortar dispensaries be allowed to do the mobile dispensary delivery services. Purple Heart does not do that, so I'm not advocating that we take that role. I'm just saying that those who've been vetted obviously have done a better job to build up the name and trust of the industry. And while we have other individuals that have come into the industry, these are the things that are taking place. Also, I wish to speak to you about equal rights for cultivation. Right now, cultivation seems to be skewed towards outdoor growers. Outdoor growers are allowed to cultivate on 1 acre, which is 44,000 square feet. The most that an indoor grower can cultivate on is 20,000 square feet. There appears to be communication about greenhouse or gas emissions and things of that nature about indoor growers. I personally think that's conjecture. Once again, Purple Heart does not cultivate. I'm only hoping to work with the legislative body so that there is parity in terms of indoor cultivation and outdoor cultivation. In terms of our sales from purchasing from our patient vendors, we purchase 1 outdoor pound of cannabis per 50 indoor pounds. And I personally feel that with the amount of forest fires that we saw last year, that if the state continues to skew the growth towards outdoor cultivation, then it will place us in a position where the indoor cultivators might not be able to meet the needs. And I think the market needs to just find its place. If there is a need for indoor cultivation, there's a need for outdoor cultivation. I'm not advocating one over the other. I'm saying parity is best. And favoring one over the other does not do the industry well. What we hope to do is bring everyone, indoor cultivators and outdoor cultivators, to equal footing so that this industry can continue to emerge. In terms of excessive taxes, my counterparts, they've spoken on that, and I would agree that we have seen taxes. We've actually asked our cities to increase our taxes in the city of Oakland. Subsequently, we pay close to 10% for the Board of Equalization tax, and we pay 5% to the city of Oakland tax, and that roughly estimates to about we pay $500,000 a year to the city of Oakland, in addition to a $60,000 per year dispensary permit. I'm saying that the business cannot continue to move forward under excessive taxes because those are a barrier to entry. So when the legislative body works on issuing licenses for the various licenses, keep in mind that this is an artisan community and that there are those that might not have the ability to pay for the higher tier licensing but may have the expertise. So please allow everyone an opportunity to move forward in this emerging paradigm. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And our final speaker on the panel, Kimberly Cargile, Director of a Therapeutic Alternative Dispensary. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, representatives. Thank you for having me here today. It is an honor. My name is Kimberly Cargile. I'm the Director of a Therapeutic Alternative. I have been studying natural medicine, holistic medicine for 15 years, and medical cannabis or medical marijuana science and law for 10 years. I graduated from Humboldt State University with honors as a medical marijuana patient in 2006 and moved to Sacramento in 2007, started managing the first of a few dispensaries in California. I've been managing dispensaries for almost 10 years now, so I have a wealth of knowledge around this area. A therapeutic alternative is a model dispensary for the state of California. We are here today to represent small businesses. We have 15,000 patients and see about 100 patients a day. We spend quite a large amount of time with our patients. We lab test all of our medicine as required by new state law for molds, mildews, pesticides, solvents, contaminants of any kind, along with the cannabinoid profile, which is extremely important because the cannabinoids are the active ingredients in cannabis. And we base our recommendations for our patients tailored to our patient's symptoms based on the cannabinoid profile. Each cannabinoid provides relief of different symptoms. We have approximately 24 strains of dried herb at any time which have varying cannabinoid profiles. We have topicals, lotions, sprays, salves, great for pain relief, injuries. We have topicals, concentrates, edibles, tinctures, patches, inhalers. We have a long list of products, and I bring this up because this is the main concern I have today regarding the new regulations. I'll talk about that in a second. We have weekly continuing education classes to provide our staff with the newest knowledge on phytocannabinoids, the endocannabinoid system, various illnesses, disorders, and injuries that our patients may be suffering from, so that we can provide the highest quality of service to our patients at all times. Our staff wears scrubs to present a professional medical appearance, and our patients are recommended specific dosages that are dependent on a variety of things. So I just wanted to address the Department of Health's question regarding dosage. Dosage is individualized for each patient. It's dependent on the patient's biochemistry, their weight, their metabolism, their digestion, the level of liver enzymes, their endocannabinoid levels, which are the same as phytocannabinoids. They're similar molecules that our bodies produce. We test for phytocannabinoids or cannabinoids in the plant. Those are the same molecules that attach to the endocannabinoid receptors in our body. And it's dependent on our endocannabinoid receptor saturation levels. It's also dependent on the patient's severity of symptoms, the administration technique, and the cannabinoid profile itself. Our starting dose we recommend is 5 milligrams per 100 pounds for an inexperienced patient and 10 milligrams per 100 pounds for an experienced patient. Our patients are normal, average, everyday working people who are trying to find relief from their symptoms and do not want to experience a high. We're trying to provide the lowest amount of cannabis possible so that they can afford to come back and use the cannabis and so that it doesn't impair them in their everyday life. We're a full-scale holistic health center modeled after Harborside, and we provide patients free access to a long list of therapeutic services, including yoga, massage therapy, sound therapy, aromatherapy, crystal therapy, energy therapy, acupressure, and the list goes on and on. We have specific programs for our patients. The two main programs we provide are Healing Yourself Naturally, which is specific for cancer patients, where we have therapists work with them on a weekly basis, pHing their body, working with organic nutrition, vitamin and mineral, herbal supplementation. We're trying to heal our patients holistically. It's not just about the medical cannabis, but that is a very important part, and that's why we're here today. We also provide a doctor to our patients, along with all of our other services at no cost, to set up individualized cannabis education for our patients and help them find the specific strain, the specific administration technique that's going to work best for them. We're open to tours. We're here in Sacramento. We're right down the street. We're a City of Sacramento permitted and regulated dispensary, and we give weekly tours to local governments throughout the valley, state governments, regulators. I've taken Fiona Ma with me to pay my taxes in cash, and I'm taking George Runner next week. We want to work with everyone and teach you what we're doing. We're good people trying to help our society, help our communities. And I think sometimes that gets looked aside. We get thrown in with the criminals, not on purpose, but it just happens, you know. And so I really hope that as we work with regulators in the future, they do the tours, they take the time to learn from this industry. We have a wealth of knowledge. The main problem I see with the passing of these regulations is the bans that have been put into place. You know, I've been an advocate for about 10 years now, and I haven't seen this many bans happen for at least 5 years. You know, this reminds me of years ago when we were having the bans, we were having the raids, we're having all these bans, and I'm thinking, what's next? Are we going to have raids? I mean, we're going down a very bad path here as I go before local governments. You know, some of them are working with us, but the majority, as quoted today from John Lovell of Law Enforcement Advocate, over 200 localities have banned since the implementation of the Medical Marijuana Safety and Regulation Act. And according to our moderator of the California City and County Ban Watch List, over 161 cities and counties have enacted or introduced a ban since the passage of the legislature. 93 have passed and 63 are pending, and I'm pretty sure she just texted me, I think that number is up to 100 have passed. So every day it feels like bans are passing, and it's turning our businesses back into criminals. So we really need help on this. I'm thinking possibly if the Department of Agriculture would maybe send out a statement saying that they do not intend to take over the regulations March 1st, while we're waiting for the pending legislature to pass, we really need someone to do something in writing as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll see if committee members have questions. Mr. Bonta.
Thank you to all the members of the panel. Really appreciate your partnership and the work we've done together, and we'll do together on this on the legislation that we've been working on, and just really appreciate your constructive approach and willingness to work together. A lot of important work to do, important cleanup to do, and although we got something very groundbreaking done last year, we're at the beginning of the process, not the end. So I just want to thank you, and also want to give a particular call out to Mr. D'Angelo and Mr. Stevenson. From my district, thank you for the tremendous leadership you provided for so many years in the industry and all the contributions that you've made and continue to make to the industry. So thank you. Just a couple quick comments and then a question. I heard some concerns about the banking issue, and I just want to highlight that the large cleanup bill, AB 1575, co-authored by Dr. Wood and I and Mr. Lackey, Mr. Jones Sawyer, Mr. Cooley, includes a component specifically addressed to the banking challenge that we have in the industry, and asked that a working group be put together made of key stakeholders from the industry and the financial institutions community and regulating community to come up with best practices that we can implement and use and provide a report back to us, the legislature, for how we can move forward in that area. So I know you're aware of that, but for members of the public, I wanted to just call that out. And then I also want to ask you, especially Mr. Stevenson and Mr. D'Angelo, what are your patients saying about the regulations? And are there ways that we need to think about as a legislature to strengthen patient protections and patient access?
I don't think that most of our patients have not really delved very deeply into the details of the regulations. We have heard from our growers, however, who are gravely disturbed about the mandatory distributorship. There's a number of reasons for that, but that would be the major complaint that I'm hearing right now from our registered patient population. Of course, all of our growers, we work with about 700 small growers. We're the largest purchaser of cannabis from small growers in the state, and I have not spoken to one of them that thinks that the mandatory distributorship is a good idea.
Other comments from the panel to that question, if you would like to?
Yes. What I've encountered with the patient vendors is that they're really unsure. The state, I think, has to do a better job of disseminating the information, because the information is roughly coming from me. And coming from me, it sounds good, but I think for the state to get more of the artisan growers, manufacturers, producers on board, the state should have some sort of some way to disseminate the information, maybe through social media or print or media. I don't know which model may be the best, but I think the state has to become more actively involved to say that, hey, we're involved in this. We want to bring us all together to grow this industry.
Thank you. Yes.
If I could, I'll just note that these 23 events that we've hosted are in addition to about a dozen other events. So we've tracked contact with 6,000 business owners since signature, and what we hear going into those conversations and what we hear coming out of the conversations is significantly different. Going into the conversation, there's a wealth of misinformation and misunderstandings. There's so many unanswered questions, as the legislature knows. The regulators haven't even begun to dig into this. And so in the absence of certainty, a small business community that's been plagued by uncertainty for decades is going to react negatively. With a little bit of, hey, we're still answering those questions. It's important to be involved. Reach out to your legislatures, local government. You see a much more confident, a much more higher level of comfort leaving those workshops than you do coming into them. And so I would definitely reinforce what Mr. Stevenson said and say that, state support, every one of you has a district. Every one of you has businesses in that district. Let's do more to partner, and especially to our local government partners and colleagues. Let's do more to build those three critical partnerships: industry, local gov, industry, state, but state, local gov especially. So got a lot more work to do.
Thank you. Yes.
And I see that we have a major problem here in Sacramento and our surrounding rural counties with the lack of local permitting. In the Bay Area, they are producing permits. Humboldt County is, so I assume those dispensaries aren't having such a problem. But our cultivators are coming back to us, and in order to get a state permit, you have to have a local permit, and local counties are banning all around Sacramento Valley. So our cultivators are very concerned, and we're very concerned as a dispensary that's been open since 2009 serving our patients that we are not going to have the products that we need to have. We're not going to have the same products we have today. We're seeing maybe 10% of our cultivators and manufacturers are going to be coming into compliance because they need those local permits and local governments aren't giving them to them.
Thank you.
While we are
Mr.
a
Bell.
business group, personally, the patient advocates I've come across just have a lot of misinformation. They think we're taking their medicine away. They think we're going to cut off their access. It's the amount of, so there's a lot of misinformation out there. It's sometimes I feel it's put out by people that aren't excited about following rules and regulations. And so we are actively trying to counter that. I know the patient groups and the other groups like Normal are actively trying to put out educational material for their own members, so they can be better educated on the bill and not sort of believe the telephone, Facebook, third-hand game.
Thank you. Mr. Wood, did you have some comments or questions?
Yeah, I did have some questions, comments. Well, first of all, obviously, you've talked about a lot of the same things that some of our earlier panelists hit on, concerns about overregulation, concerns about banking, transportation, delivery services. And we've received some medical information here that maybe the public health department might be interested in, since that seems to be difficult to come by. The issue around GHG reduction, Mr. Stevenson, I think comes out of the concern about indoor cultivation and the large energy footprint associated with that. There are some cities, the city of Arcata, for example, where there were rampant indoor cultivation, which led to huge spikes in energy use, to the point where the city actually commissioned PG&E to have a special tier for people using really, really large amounts of electricity. So it's really, I don't know that I don't believe there was any conscious effort by the legislature to penalize indoor versus outdoor. But there was also there is concern about, when you look at GHG reduction, the amount of energy that's used to actually grow indoors versus using the sun. So I think that was part. Certainly, when I looked at that was things I was looking at. I would be interested. I know Mr. D'Angelo said he had some other problems, so I would be interested in hearing some of those. But I'd also like to ask a little bit. You were pretty firm about your disdain for the distributorship model, which is actually the way alcohol beverage control works in this state, and was actually put in place to actually protect small growers and from extremely large scale producers that we, certainly I do. I represent Humboldt, Mendocino, Trinity, Del Norte counties. I have concern that large-scale production will, quite frankly, kill small farmers off in my district. So what are you offering that's different from a distributorship model, and how is that going to protect small growers?
So I think that one of the major problems that small growers are going to face is the costs and the expense that are going to be involved in coming into compliance. I think that Kimberly is right. A minority of growers without substantial assistance are going to be able to come into compliance. So what I think would be a better approach is a community-supported agriculture approach, where a larger tier of producers is licensed with the requirement that they build out the infrastructure, the security infrastructure, the basic production infrastructure, management infrastructure, and that they have a dedicated amount of their space which is available on affordable terms to smaller growers. I think that way that's a win-win situation that really addresses the real problems that growers are going to have, which is where are they going to find the huge amounts of money that they're going to need to come into compliance, where in many cases are they going to find the new properties that they will need to relocate to. I think CSA is a better approach.
If I could also comment, thank you, Assemblymember Wood, for raising both of those points. To the question of greenhouse gas emissions, briefly, this has been an ongoing conversation since AB 34. Early in last session, there were provisions there. There's a study from Lawrence Livermore Lab out of UC Berkeley that indicates 8% of domestic energy in California is consumed to cultivate. That was in 2011. We expect it's increased since then. Having worked on forest conservation and offsets and protocols in other policy arenas, I think it is our members, we do have about 150 indoor cultivators, and they've all agreed that offsetting that carbon is critical moving forward. A sustainable cannabis industry is what California is building. Those protocols are part of that. We know that. All commerce that has GHG emissions needs to account for them. That is what AB 32 says. Describing the CSA model, there is a provision in the Food and Agricultural Code that we would like clarity from the legislature on. The Nonprofit Cooperative Association, we would like certainty and clarity that Type 1s and 2s especially, and Type 3s also can organize as co-ops. That is the model whereby the small producers can collectivize and work together in order to work in the marketplace. So pre-existing code section in the Food and Ag Code section that we have raised with the regulators, we'll certainly raise it with the Ag Committee here. Lastly, while the distributorship represents the most disruptive component from an industry perspective, there's absolutely no question that it has been the most negatively received. What I hear from rural small growers is that getting products to market and finding market access points is the most important part. And while we may not see it yet, the distributor tier does likely provide a solution to enable growers from all parts of the county, all parts of the state, to get to the market, to have a safe, secure location where they can get those products to the market. So, it wasn't our favorite provision when it came up. We are encouraging adaptation. This was a delicate compromise, and we think that the distributorship is a critical piece of meeting the 21st century market needs.
Mr. Bradley, and then Mr. Stevenson.
The issue is not the concept that the distribution is there. It's that we're mandating it. We're creating a monopoly. Just like the same distribution people that funded the company that funded this, Southern Wine and Spirits, Young's Markets, they control the alcohol industry now. Look how they control spirits. The spirits industry had to run a bill this year, the small distillers, just to give them access because they've been blocked out because they're mandated to use a distribution firm. No problem. If farmers want to use a distribution company, go for it. But if they want to have direct access to a dispensary, we think that should also be their option. We don't want to create a monopoly for anybody. And right now, the alcohol distribution model creates a monopoly for distribution over the whole state, where they get to set prices for everything. Two companies set prices for the whole state. And that's what we're simply trying to avoid. And while in concept it's nice, mandating it is the big issue. That's all.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes, I'd like to digress to speak about the cultivation parity. And I would ask for for those involved to look at it from another view, and that view could be, well, should we just curtail outdoor cultivation because they leave pesticides and rat poisoning, and they leach the fertilizers into the freshwater streams? So each mode of growing has its issues. And I think there's, with knowing how indoor cultivators are and understanding that if indoor cultivation is restricted, you also restrict employment opportunities as well. And I could easily say that more harm and damage is done to the environment by outdoor cultivation, regardless if it's done by natural light or not. So I'm only asking, and once again, I don't cultivate. I'm only asking for parity for the industry to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ms. Cargill.
I just want to point out the history regarding indoor cultivation. It's usually because local governments wanted it indoors, not because the farmers wanted to grow indoors. It's much more expensive, and we are very environmentally conscious. But local governments are most likely going to continue to keep it indoors because of security concerns, especially in urban areas. So I hope that we don't take this conversation and do something negative for indoor gardens, because those are also needed. Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Bonta.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion on the distributor model, so I just want to make a couple points on that. And there's some nuance points because the bill takes a specific approach to the distributor model. Typically, in a distributor model, you have a distributor who buys from a producer and then turns around and sells to a retailer. That's not required under our set of bills. The reason that we have the distributor is to have quality assurance and testing. We see it as a consumer protection issue, so that all of the product goes to one central place and gets tested, and the quality is assured. And then the producer, the grower, can take that back and then have its own contracts with whoever it wants to sell to. So I just want to make sure that that point is understood and that we're all starting from the same sort of set of facts as we discuss the distributor model. And certainly, I understand that not everyone thinks it's perfect, but I just want to make sure that we understand how it works and how it doesn't work.
Thank you. Mr. Wood. No, we're just going to move on. Yeah.
Yeah, I would go back. I guess I did want to hear from Mr. D'Angelo because we did ask.
Thanks, Jim.
I'd asked for what other problems, obviously, and then I launched into that one question.
Yeah.
So
the other problems you mentioned
Sure.
earlier.
Well, just to touch on the distributorship model for just a moment, because I do appreciate the distinction there. But no matter whether or not the distributors are actually putting a margin on top of the price or whether or not they're providing a service, they must make a profit margin. And they must charge for that profit margin. And so there's going to be an increased cost to patients, which is a problem because we're already having a difficult time competing with the underground market. And considering the number of times that a product may need, if it's being extracted, manufactured, processed, may need to move between locations, those costs could end up being quite high. We also have an issue with liability for damaged product. No company has ever attempted to distribute and transport the many different forms of cannabis. We have everything from pills to tinctures to dried flowers to living plants to extracts of a variety of different types, all of which need different storage, handling, and packaging. Who's going to handle the liability when a company for the first time tries to take that task on and inevitably doesn't get it right? Inevitably there's damages. The insurance companies will not touch this. The dispensaries are not going to want to pay for damaged product. My guess is that it's going to be the growers and the manufacturers who are going to end up footing that bill. I don't think it'll be the distributors.
Thank you.
So there's a lot of problems with it.